I'm Insomniac, and this is the Starking model TM0915.
Oh, yo!
Insomniac.
Alright, before I jump into the regular format of my reviews with the sections, there are a few things I have to say about this watch. But first of all, I want to give a partial thank you to the company rep who wanted to send this in. I say partial because, long story short, somebody from the company emailed me, said they'd like me to review one of their watches. They'd send it in for free. I said, sure. They said, pick one of these watches, and there was like a list of them. And without boring you with all the details of the back and forth, I picked a totally different watch, but they basically shoved this one down my throat, and that's what showed up. But A, it's a free watch, and B, it is something very interesting to review for you. The reason why I say it's interesting is, you probably could tell by the title already, this is an automatic mechanical watch for $35.99. Not only is it just a mechanical watch and has an automatic movement, it's a high beat movement, 8 ticks per second, it hand winds, it hacks. So a few of you already might be thinking, well hell, let me hop on Amazon and order one of these. Maybe not so fast. If you're suspicious about the $35 price tag, there might be something to that. Now I'm going to take you through each of the sections like I do in my watch reviews so you can see, in detail why I feel the way I do about this watch. And of course at the end we'll get to whether or not $35.99 is a good value for this watch, which again you might be thinking, of course it is. It's a watch, it's a high beat automatic movement, it's $35.99, but again, we're going to get to that. One of the things I wanted to explain before I get into the sections of the review is if you didn't skip past that info screen, you notice that some of the information wasn't filled in the way I normally fill it in. For example, I didn't tell you what material the crystal's made out of because it doesn't tell you what material the crystal's made out of. Both on the website and on Amazon it says scratch-resistant glass. And the most frustrating thing that wasn't filled in the way I normally fill it in that info screen was about the movement. Obviously with an automatic movement, and especially once I figured out that this is actually a high beat movement, I wanted to know what it was. But on the website and on Amazon, it just says automatic timekeeping. That's all I could find. So I emailed the rep who originally contacted me and I asked for the manufacturer and caliper of the movement. She pretended I never even said it and responded to something else that was in the email. So apparently they're just not going to tell you, and I'm not a watchmaker, so I could certainly open the back of the watch, but I won't be able to tell you whose movement it is just by looking at it. The watch and the brand are Chinese though, so chances are, especially at this price point, the movement is also Chinese. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good movement or not a good movement. But anyway, there are a lot of ups and downs with this piece, so now let's get into the sections of the review, and, we'll see what you think. The case on the TM0915 is a stainless steel case, polished everywhere, even the case back. I actually really do like the shape of the case, has a great bevel to it. I like where the lugs come out, they actually curve right at the right place on the wrist. The quality of the machining and shaping of the lugs, for example, and the case overall is so-so. It's what you would expect with a lower price point watch. But the polish, although not maybe impressive for watches overall, is pretty impressive for a $36 piece. So I will give them that. Your case back has the company logo and some information about the watch, including 3 atmospheres water resistant, the model of the watch, stainless steel case back. Sadly, no information about the movement as mentioned earlier. And your crown has the company logo on it as well. The only issue with the crown is that it actually looks like it has some decent grip to it. See if I can get it there on camera. It looks like it has some decent grip to it, but it's actually very slippery and not very easy to use for winding or setting. It's not impossible. Obviously I've done it since I've had it, but it's really not the best. The dial on the T0195 sadly is one of the weakest points of the entire watch, if not the weakest point. And of course the reason why that's so sad is because that is the most visible part of the watch. That's the part that you're going to look at every time you look down to tell the time. Unlike the case, which actually has a fairly decent quality look and shape to it, the dial of this watch is not only plain, it looks really cheap. I've had a couple different people look at it and tell me that the dial actual background reminds them of cardboard. That's really not a good sign. You don't have any applied markers of any kind on the dial, which also normally wouldn't be an issue if not for the fact that the ones that are on there look almost like they were drawn on with a Sharpie. And then you move on to the logo, or what would have been the logo, or should have been the logo is what I'm saying, because you have the company logo, which isn't a bad looking little logo, on the crown, and you have it on the case back, and instead of using that, they put their name at the top, at the 12, which the name itself is kind of cheesy. I'm not sure if they know this or if they were doing this on purpose and it's just cheap marketing, but Starking, which is I guess how you would say this, is just Star and King. So it's supposed to be, what, like a play on words, like Star King? I don't know, but all I know is when I read that name, it kind of agitates me. It's very cheesy. I would have much rather have just seen the little logo there. That would have cleaned it up a little bit, because on top of the fact that the logo would have just looked better there, the font for the name of the brand also looks cheap. It looks like something out of a basic word processor that comes stock with your computer. Now down at 6 o'clock you have a date window and you have automatic written above that, which the font for that actually doesn't look too bad. Then on to the hands, which also just look cheap. They're a great length, I'll give them that. But you have these kind of polished style stick, I don't know what the hell you'd call them. They just look very uninspired hour and minute hands. And then you have a stick style second hand, which is probably the only part of the dial I can compliment, because they made it, it's probably not actual blued stainless steel, but it is a blue reflective kind of shiny some type of metal that again probably isn't actual blued stainless, but it does look good. So anyway, unfortunately the dial is probably the biggest letdown of the watch. The only usable complication on this watch is the date at 6 o'clock. You can see there it is a white numeral on a black disc, and normally it would just be there's the date, it looks fine with this dial, it works, and it would be a 10. But A, it's way too small. For the size of this dial, I mean, it's practically microscopic. And B, how hard is it to get the date disc to line up inside the window? It doesn't. You can see there that part of the 5 for the 15th is cut off, and it's that way anywhere it is on the whole date wheel so far. I've tried adjusting it multiple times. I've worn it for about 5 days. And the date, if you have a 2-number date, just does not line up in the date window. So unfortunately, this could have been a very simple 10 for usable complications because it only has 1, but it has such a cheapness to the look, being that the numerals don't line up inside the window. Time at a glance on this watch is excellent. Regardless of whether or not you like the hands, they are long, they have a good point at the end, and the indices, although they look cheap, are very easy to read, black on a white background. All the hands are long enough, great contrast between the hands and the color of the dial. So, I mean, no matter what, it's very, very easy to read the time at a glance with this piece. Now, normally when we're talking about accuracy with a mechanical watch, I just put it on the scope, which I'm going to do in a minute, so you can see the plus or minus seconds per day. But before I get to that, let's talk about one of the bigger problems, which is part of the failures of this watch. With a high beat automatic movement, you should have a really nice clean sweep of the second hand, even more so than most of the watches that I've reviewed so far on this channel. But there are a lot of stutters and stops and issues with this watch depending on what angle it's at on your wrist, depending on how you hold it. Sometimes if you shake it, it stops. Take a look at the movement for a second here. Alright, so as you can see there, it's an absolute mess. It's basically embarrassing to look at. It's definitely not something you'd want to show somebody on your wrist acting like that. They would definitely think it's broken. So now let's put it on the scope and see if it's just a sloppy look to the movement or if that also translates to pretty terrible accuracy. Alright, so we're getting a reading of plus 92 to 93 seconds a day. That is brutally terrible. Wow. The strap on this watch, in my opinion, is actually the best part of the watch. very surprising actually from the day I got it. For a watch in this price point, I was expecting probably one of the worst straps I'd ever see. Instead, what I got is a really nice genuine leather strap. It actually has their logo and name on the other side there. It has a very decent thickness to it, you can see there. A good amount of padding, actually has a good quality look to it. It doesn't look cheap or fake. You have the brand name engraved on the buckle. It doesn't necessarily look incredible there, but it is a little detail that you wouldn't necessarily expect on a cheaper watch. And I've only had this watch for about a week, so I can't speak to how durable it's going to be, but I did wear it for most of that week. And as you can see here, basically no creasing of any kind on either side. It still looks great, and most importantly, it was extremely comfortable. It was comfortable, it was balanced, it fit the wrist just right. Even the free loops worked really well. Wherever I set it to keep the tail in place, that's where it stayed. Actually, I figured I'd slip it on real quick and show it to you. So there's the strap on the wrist. Like I said, it looks really good. It feels really good. It's very comfortable. I've been extremely happy with the strap. In fact, I made the joke that if not for the fact that it has their name on the buckle, I would have probably took this strap off and stuck it on one of my other watches. But it does, so sadly, the one part of the watch that you can change, which is the strap, is probably the best part of this watch. So now we come to the last part of the review, which is the big question. It's a $36 high-beat mechanical automatic watch, but is it a good value? Now to start, as you saw there with the scores I had for the sections, it was an extremely mixed bag. Case got a pretty good score, strap got a great score, time at a glance was perfect, but they screwed up the one complication on this watch. The dial's poor and the accuracy is pretty garbage. And obviously, some of these categories are more important than others. Accuracy obviously being one of the most important. The primary function of a watch is to tell time, and to do so accurately. That is what most watchmakers of any brand and of any movement type strive for, is accuracy. And that was as far off as I ever hope to see on this scope ever again. So between that and the fact that the dial, which again is the most noticeable part of a watch, is just really poor in terms of visual construction, because again, it's not about a preference. I would never knock a watch for having a minimalist look, and proof of that would be if you go back to my review on the Berg Ulriken, I think it was called. That might have been one of the most simple and plain watches I've ever reviewed, but I certainly didn't knock the dial for it, because the quality and the look of the materials of that dial were on a whole nother level. But when your dial looks that poor, your movement looks that bad, like I said, you really wouldn't want somebody to see this thing on your wrist stopping and freezing, jumping, stuttering around. And then pair that with the fact that literally this is going to be the wrong time every 24 hours, at least by a minute or two. And I don't even really think it's a great value for $36. So it's not a lot of money. So it really comes down to whether or not you want to give it a shot, because it's not a big sacrifice if you get one of these and it's a piece of crap for 36 bucks. And of course, at the same time, when it comes to, you know, kind of cheap stuff just swinging its way out of China, sometimes it's a consistency issue. So just because this one was that terribly inaccurate doesn't mean they're all going to be. Again, I don't know anything about this movement because they wouldn't give me any information on it. So maybe it's a movement that can be properly regulated, and whoever worked on this one when this watch was put together was asleep, or just didn't care, or maybe they were 10 years old, or so who knows. You might get this watch, and other than the dial, which you can't change, that's just what it is on the 0195, maybe yours will run plus or minus 10 seconds a day. Who the hell knows? But in short, I just think it's a shame, because especially for that money, with a high-beat automatic movement, hand winding, hacking, a really great strap, a pretty decent case design and shape, I actually had high hopes for this watch. I really thought, how the hell could you go wrong with all of those pluses and a price tag of 36 bucks, but somehow they found a way to do it. If you enjoyed this review, hit the thumbs up, share it with other watch lovers. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel and turn the notifications on so you know when I have new reviews coming. Speaking of new reviews, I have another couple reviews lined up for very soon, and many more coming after that, so definitely keep watching. And of course, if you would like to see this channel grow, go and support on Patreon. I can certainly use the support and the help there. It's the link at the top of the video description. Sign up over there. You get 1 week early access to all these videos, plus a whole bunch of other rewards. And of course, if you have any cool watches you would like to see reviewed here at Should I Time This, email me at shouldItimethis@gmail.com, and I'll tell you where to send the watches so they can be reviewed and insured and sent back. And that's it. Thanks for watching.
Oh, yo! Insomniac.
Insomniac.